Is a left-handed bat and gives you a lot of flexibility around the infield. So when you're looking at trying to get somebody like a Goldie to get off his feet for a day, if you're looking to try to give even Nolan a day, you just have more flexibility with him in the infield. So, obviously it's going to put us a little short on the outfield, but we don't think that's that critical at this point.
I know you mentioned the at-bats for Lars. Was there anything you'd like to see him specifically work on in AAA?
I really just think he just needs to go down and play. You think back to when he was getting regular plate appearances, he's a very productive player, and so ultimately that's just what you want to see happen. And I think it's hard to get into a routine at the big league level when you're not playing every day, and it's really hard when you experience a couple rainouts and still not playing. So I just think it's for everybody's best interest to just let him go out and go get some at-bats.
Well, we've seen in years past with players like Colton Long for a while and Harry for a while, guys who, when their offense maybe wasn't exactly where they wanted it to be, they do enough defensively and had enough support around them in the lineup that they could still maintain a spot. Where do you see Paul DeJong on that spectrum right now?
Well, I think, all transparency, we need to see production out of him. There's no doubt, we think from a defensive standpoint, he and Sosa both do a very good job, but at some point you want to see the offensive production that we saw from years past. And so you got to remind yourself that there's a very small sample size of 3 weeks into the season. Ultimately, what you want to have him do is be a productive member of our lineup. And so I don't think you're equating him to what you saw with some of those younger players that had sort of the defensive anchor that they could tie to, whereas Paul, we expect him to be that all-star type caliber player, and that's what we're hoping to see. And so early on he's struggling at the plate, but our fingers are crossed, and I know he's working hard to try to get to where he needs to be that productive player.
When you look at sample size with Paul, his last 1,000 plate appearances or so are below 700 OPS. So how do we compare that sample versus the short early season sample?
Well, I think, again, you go back to the 2020 season, struggled with COVID. You go back to last year, had a broken rib. Now he's healthy. So, I think, trying to define or pare back exactly where you become right and we become wrong, I don't know, Jeff. It's just something we're trying to give him that opportunity and hopefully giving him a few days off gives him that chance.
John, I apologize coming in late. Can you just talk about bringing Brendan up, what you'd like having him on the roster right now?
Yeah, I'll give you the Cliff Note version. We like just his defensive flexibility. Obviously, he can hit from the left side, so we think we can give some of our veteran players some time off from time to time. And the other purpose of it was to just give Lars some at-bats down to Memphis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Do you feel like he can fit into that DH mix? Is that part of the plan for him as well?
I don't think it's quite as critical. I mean, here's a guy that was playing every day down in Memphis, so worrying about having to get him in every day is not that important. But we do think he's someone that can give you a competitive at bat. But most importantly, I think he just gives our manager a lot more flexibility.
What have you seen early on from Dickerson in his at bats?
Again, I'm going to go to small sample size, Jeff. Obviously he's been a proven hitter in the big leagues. Obviously he's not gotten off to the start that he's hoped to. I think you look around the league right now, there's not a lot of people hitting. Hopefully over time he can get into that groove, but we still believe that he's capable of contributing, and so I think it's just getting that opportunity and putting a few good at bats together.
Well, you just kind of touched on it. Home runs are way down, batting average is down. Is that a result of the humidors? What's your summation?
Boy, I think it's anybody's best guess right now. It could just be simply a part of the weather. It could be that having all 30 clubs using a humidor could have some effect on it. I don't know. I think over time we'll have a better answer to that, but I think you got to allow time to happen.
How much value does a series like this against this particular opponent, a team as good as the Mets, hold for you all in terms of sort of seeing where you're at in an early season framework?
I think any time you play a series, I think whether it's in April or in September, they always have importance. So I think trying to overvalue what you look like today. I think we've all been a part of long seasons here, and we've seen what it looks like. You look at how we performed last June, you would have thought we should have never bought at the trading deadline, should have broke up the club and moved on to the next season. But if you react like that, then you don't have the opportunity to have a 17-game winning streak, and ultimately and get to the postseason. So I think, how you compete over the next few days here, that'll say something, but it's not going to say everything, and it's certainly not something that I would recommend anybody jumping to any, hard conclusions.
What do you make of how Sosa has kind of found opportunities and created more? I don't want to say the cards are stacked against him, but he's had to earn pretty much every opportunity. It seems like he's up for that challenge.
I think the one thing I think all of us admire about him is the energy he brings, whether that's getting everyday plate appearances or not, he still shows up every day. And I think when you look at him even as a minor league player, he was always considered good but never great, and yet he never let that bother him, and always kept competing. I can remember a couple years ago, speaking with him and his agent, and how disappointed he wasn't going to be guaranteed the shortstop job, and that was Paul DeJong coming off the All-Star season. And I'm like, but we're still gonna, you're still in our thought process. It's just in terms of how much playing time you're going to get, that's still a TBD, and yet it doesn't bother. And he shows up every day with that energy, with a smile, and when he does get his chance, he competes, and he competes hard, and that's a great thing to say about an individual.
There are guys who make careers out of that, long careers, just by saying, hey, I'm going to keep coming, even if there's not a spot, I'll try to force one, right?
And he's also someone that, maybe when he gets an opportunity at some point, he can allow that to have him grow into something. I mean, we've seen that with some players that never really got their shot here in St. Louis because of our competitive roster, and then when they finally did, they made the most of it somewhere else. Like Solano jumps to mind as just someone that ended up, being able to put together a nice major league career after he left here.
Well, when you look at the way that the pitching staff has performed thus far, especially the bullpen, is this pretty much what you envisioned coming into the season?
That's certainly what we hoped for. I think there's a lot of things that we're excited about. And then seeing the emergence of somebody like a Palante, we were excited about him a year ago, but I don't know if I would have been overly confident saying he was going to break with the club and contribute as he's had. But look, we know we have a lot of talent in that bullpen. It's been nice to see how it's been used, and I do think the Cardinals are definitely a team that benefited from the 28-man roster for this month, because it allowed us to sort of mix and match a little bit better than maybe if we had been down to 13. So that flexibility has been helpful.
I wanted to ask you about Helsley as well. He said he's healthy, and that's the biggest difference between what he was last year and what he is right now. What have you seen from him that is different in your mind?
Well, I do think the knee bothered him last year, and having that strength back or the confidence to land on it is obviously shown well for him. Look, he's always had that electric arm and powerful arm, and now to see it where he feels good about it, you're watching him pitch with confidence, and we're seeing the results of it.
Well, you've got to see Hicks twice in relief and once as a starter. What do you think about his progress, and how do you build him up?
Well, I'm encouraged on what we're seeing with Mr. Hicks. I think you're going to have to continue to take those steps forward in the sense of see that pitch count continue to grow. Obviously, beneficiaries of the expanded roster right now. So at some point, when you are back to 13 pitchers, having him being able to get to 60 or 65 or even higher is going to be really important, especially if you're playing 14, 15, 16 straight days.
We saw Jack throwing in Milwaukee. Where does his rehab stint stand now?
Well, I don't think he's to the point where we're talking about an actual rehab assignment yet, but from everything I'm hearing internally, we're encouraged with the steps he's taking. But as I told you guys a month ago, it's something that we're just going to have to be patient with, and fingers crossed that at some point he's going to be a key contributor to this rotation.
Anything additional on Verhagen now that he got back here and saw many more attacks here?
Not really. I got the injection and throw on Wednesday, and then depending on how that goes, make a decision if it's something we should consider rehab assignment or not. I think we'll just keep that page open.
Looks shorter than longer, though.
Oh, I would agree with that. Rarely do I agree with you, but I would agree with that.
It's good to nail one once in a while.
Got lucky.
Horseshoes and hand grenades.
So his MRI came back clean, Verhagen, he just needed an injection?
Yeah, he was feeling like some discomfort. I guess I would describe it more technically as like an impingement. Mm-hmm. And so The injection, I think, helped loosen him up. He said he's experienced this before. He says, he had it a year ago, and he feels fine after the injection. So let's hope that continues.
I guess that's one is Alex. Is he up off the mound or anything yet?
Not speaking of
Okay.
Alex, question from someone. He is taking steady progress as well, but there's really no update on him at this point. As I remind you guys, I think probably when we get towards middle to end of May, we'll have a better feel for where both those guys are.
And the last thing for me, Nolan Gorman's hitting the ball really well right now down in AAA.
I noticed.
What goes into some of the discussions that you guys have about what the timing would be for him potentially coming up to the base?
So it's not so much timing as much as it is about how much are you going to actually play. And, when you look at our club, one of the keystones of this team is our defense. And so if we're starting to have to reshuffle the lineup, and it's not saying we're not willing to do it, but that's going to be the major part of the discussion, because to get someone like Nolan Gorman up here, you expect him to play, definitely against every right-hander that pitches at a minimum. And so, just trying to think through how you would manage that is really the biggest task. And we also don't want to be overly knee-jerky on the very first topic we were talking about earlier on just where we are with Paul DeJong. So, it's let a little time happen, but it's great to see what he's doing down there. I think that's very exciting, and I'm not overly surprised.
Thanks for your time.